What's going on, guys? Briar Rabbit here. Today we're going to be talking about this guy. This is the new Oculus Rift S VR headset. This is available for about $400. And I wanted to kind of give you guys a review after using it for about a week or so. So, previous experience with VR, I own a PlayStation VR headset. I own a Vive headset for PC. And I previously owned a original Rift headset. However, I didn't really like that one that much. I had a lot of problems with tracking when I got it right out of the box. So I actually returned that, bought the Vive, and then have been happily using the Vive ever since. Now, I was interested in this because it's a significant upgrade over the old Rift headset. There's a few different reasons for this. One is the screen inside of the headset itself offers a higher resolution and is no longer an OLED panel. It's actually an LCD panel. The resolution of the screen inside is 2560 by 1440, and that means it's 1280 by 1440 per eye. One of the differences between this headset and the original Rift headset and the Vive headset is there's no IPD adjustment. That means that there is no way to move the lenses or the screen to match the distance between your pupils. So that's all done with software. For me, it worked perfectly right out of the box. I didn't even have to mess with the IPD adjustment. It just was correct for me. But if you've used a headset in the past where that's been a big deal, then you might want to test drive this before you buy it to make sure that it actually, you can see into this thing clearly. Other than that, aside from there being no IPD adjustment, I think it's a very significant upgrade over the old Rift headset. And there's a few different reasons for this. Obviously, the screen resolution is a huge improvement to me over the original Rift and the Vive and, of course, the PlayStation headset. It is so much higher. It's 2560 by 1440 cut into two ways. So really, it's 1280 by 1440 per eye. And it's also made out of LCD instead of OLED. Now, for TVs, you might think that OLED, or, for other devices, you might think that OLED is actually an upgrade over LCD, but actually the way the subpixels are arranged created a bigger screen door effect than what LCD has. And one of the things that I noticed right away when using this headset for the first time was, wow, there's really a lot less of that screen door effect. The kind of black lines between each pixel is really minimized in here. It's a much better display than what I think the original Rift or the Vive had. One downgrade of the headset is that it actually only runs at 80 hertz as opposed to the 90 hertz of the original Rift headset and of the Vive headset. That's not a big deal. 80 hertz is fine. I'm not able to notice the difference between 80 hertz and 90 hertz. I am definitely looking forward to trying out Valve's new headset that runs up to 144 hertz, but the difference between 80 and 90 hertz to me was not apparent whatsoever while playing games. So that's it with the screen. The screen, I think, looks a lot better than the older versions of VR hardware. It's a significant upgrade in my opinion, and I don't really mind the fact that it's 80 hertz as opposed to 90 hertz. One thing I do want to talk about is the tracking. So this is a significant departure over previous generations of the Rift. Previous generations of the Rift had cameras that you mounted on the desk or on the wall, and they were literally black and white cameras that pointed at your headset and at your controllers and tracked them in that manner. Each camera had to be hooked up to your computer via USB, and a lot of computers don't have enough USB ports for all the cameras and the headset, which meant adding to your PC more USB ports via a PCI interface. And frankly, it was a pain in the neck. I never had luck getting it working and then keeping it working, which eventually led to me returning the product. This one uses an inside-out tracking system. What that means is there's actually cameras on the Rift headset itself. There's actually 5 cameras positioned around this thing. And what those do is they track your space and they track your controllers. The controllers are tracked by the headset itself. So if the controllers are blocked by your body or are outside the view of these cameras, you actually lose tracking on the controllers. Most of the time, 99% of the time, I didn't have a problem with this. Only in a few instances, if the controller went like kind of too far to the side, would it lose the tracking. and kind of go wonky on you. I think that there is some software also that's kind of trying to predict what the controller is doing when it can't see it. But occasionally it does go wonky because all the cameras are basically mounted on your face. And obviously if you go behind your back or behind your body, let's say you're swinging a sword and you really have to make a big swing, or you go behind your back to pick something out of, like if you have a scabbard on your back, it can lose tracking a little bit. For the most part, though, it seemed to be pretty good. What that offers, though, is actually pretty huge. Instead of having to have, like the original Rift, cameras positioned around your room, or like the Vive, the sensor lasers positioned around your room, this thing is contained all in one. When you get the Rift, basically what you see is what you get. You get the headset, controllers, and you plug it into your PC, you download the software, and you're good to go. The setup is much more simplified than anything with external trackers. And to me, that makes it a lot more convenient to use and a lot easier to set up, which means I'm going to use it more often. One of the problems with VR is that if you don't use it every day, and if you don't keep it set up every day, the actual act of setting it up can actually lead you to be like, I'll just play a different game. I don't feel like setting all that stuff up again just to play VR. Because this has the inside-out tracking, it really is super simple to just put the thing on and start playing right away. If you move it to a different room with a different computer, you basically spray paint a line around your playable area with one of the controllers inside the software, and that's it for setup. It's really, really quick. It's really easy, and to me, it's a huge improvement just as far as usability and setup go, that I got to say I'm really impressed with it. The tracking, not as good as external trackers like we see on the Vive, but I think it was good enough 90% of the time that I didn't really miss having external tracking, and I really did like having the ease of use that the inside-out tracking does provide. I want to talk a little bit about the headband, because the headband has been completely redone. What you see now is kind of a Halo-style headband, similar to what we saw in the PlayStation VR, where it actually has an adjustment ratchet that allows you to fit it to the size of your head. And what that means is, since it's a big plastic halo, it actually sits on the crown of your head. The weight of the headset sits on the crown of your head. Previous generations of the Rift and Vive used just basically elastic bands that strapped around your head and just press the face mask against your face, and that could become really uncomfortable after hours of use. With this system, the weight of the headset is really balanced on your head, and the mask just kind of sits in front of your face. None of the weight of the mask is kind of pressing against your face. There's a bit of foam on the mask itself, and that is meant to basically block out light, but you don't want to actually have this pressing against your face. You don't want to have the weight of the headset pressing against your face. You want to adjust it in a way that the foam is touching your face, but there's no weight on there. And I found it to be very comfortable. There's also an adjustment to change the distance that the face mask is away from your face. And I found that there's not a ton of adjustment there. I was able to get it to fit my face by having it like the farthest distance away. I also wear glasses under the mask, so that is a concern. You don't want the glasses, your glasses, to touch the lenses of the Oculus. I found the thing to be very comfortable. It feels lighter than other headsets I've used. It doesn't have quite as much of kind of overarching pad as the PlayStation VR. The PlayStation VR kind of has a bump up on the top here with more padding, so more of the headset rests on your forehead. This one kind of just clamps around your head, but I found it comfortable nonetheless. The lenses I also found are much improved over previous lenses as well. They still use this kind of Fresnel glass where it's you'll see like little lines around the glass, and in my Vive I could always see those lines. I could always see the lines in the lens. However, in the Oculus, I can't even see them when I'm in play, so I would consider that a much improved lens design. Overall, the thing is very comfortable to use, and the display looks fantastic. And for $400, like it's it's a big improvement over where we were just a couple of years ago, where the Vive and the original Oculus were going for $800 and didn't offer nearly this amount of screen resolution or convenience. The adjustability of the thing is pretty good. I will say that I was a little annoyed. There is a ratchet that kind of goes to the back of this thing, but it doesn't lock in place. So something like a PlayStation VR, when you use the ratchet, it locks in place, and then you have to use a button on the back to release that ratchet. This doesn't have the button. You can just kind of push the thing in, which can make kind of, before you get used to it, it kind of makes putting it on kind of a pain in the neck. But once you get used to it, you're pretty okay. One note about the padding in this. The padding feels pretty good. It's very comfortable, but on the headband itself, it's not replaceable. The padding is not removable. So once this thing gets funked up, it's probably going to stay pretty funky. So I'm not sure if there's a way to wash this yet without taking it off of the headset. You definitely want to be very careful about using chemicals or liquids near your headset. The part around the face mask is removable and replaceable, so you can actually buy different sizes of that for different fitments. And it is pretty easy to take off and to put back on. So if that foam gets messed up, you can definitely wash it much easier than the foam around the headset. It's really unfortunate that that foam around the headset is not removable. I want to talk about the controllers just a little bit. I think these are the best controllers out there right now. I haven't tried the new ones by Valve yet, the Knuckles controllers. I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on those, but I really like the controllers for the Rift. I like the first generation for the original Rift, and I really like the new Rift S controllers as well. The tracking, like I said before, is pretty good unless you're blocked by your body or you kind of get out of range of the cameras. But for the most part, the tracking is really good. And the buttons on the Rift are really good as well. A couple of things about them is they're all touch sensitive. They can feel when your fingers hit them. So if you just touch this button, the Rift knows that you're touching it even before you press it down. Same with all the buttons on the controller itself. It's also got real analog joysticks, which is great for games that use them. In fact, I was playing Trover, I think it was Trover Saves the Universe, and that game is kind of like a 3D platformer, and it felt great with the Rift controllers. I actually think these controllers are some of the best out there, including the PlayStation, the Xbox, and the Switch. I really like these controllers. If I could use them for other games, I would. It's almost like having Joy-Cons, but they have like full range of motion and they're much more comfortable. They're very comfortable in the hand. They have triggers. They have kind of index finger buttons here for picking things up, a couple buttons on the face, and then the joysticks as well. They feel great. No matter what game I'm playing, they seem to work just fine, whether I'm using a lightsaber or a gun, or I'm playing a 3D platformer. They just seem to work, and I really like that. They also use AA batteries, which is really good because you can, if you run out of batteries, you can just put another battery in there, and you can actually buy, obviously, rechargeable batteries if you want to go the recharge route. One of the things I couldn't stand about the Vive was that the batteries were internal, and you had to charge them, so that meant that like if I was playing for a while or I hadn't charged them before I recently had played for a long session and the batteries were dead, I just had to, not play and wait for the batteries to charge. Whereas with these, I can just replace the battery very quickly and get on my way. Theoretically, you'd have like 4 batteries, 2 of them charging, 2 of them in the Rift, and always have a spare set of batteries ready to go. And I really like that about the controllers. Software is a big deal. With the previous generation of the Rift, when the Rift first came out, the biggest hit to it was that it was owned by Facebook. They had their own Oculus store, and that was the only software you could play on the Oculus. Since then, things have changed dramatically. Now, if you want to buy games off of Steam, Steam supports the Oculus headset. You can also obviously use the Oculus Store, so there's a much broader selection of ways to get software. Well, there's 2 now, basically. You can play Steam games on your Oculus. It's supported by Steam. and obviously you can use Oculus, and that goes with, basically any PC headset. The problem is the game selection, the games just aren't there yet. There's some really cool experiences in VR. Some of them are quite old. Some of the first games I played in VR, like Super Hot VR, were absolutely incredible. And more recently, there's been some really good games as well, such as the new Darth Vader game that's on the Oculus store, or Trover Saves the Universe, or the new Spider-Man Homecoming game. The problem with a lot of these games is they're really amazing experiences for, let's say, 10 minutes to an hour. Let's take the new Darth Vader game, right? With the Darth Vader game, it is an outstanding experience. Graphically, it looks phenomenal. The wielding a lightsaber in VR just feels amazing. You get to fight with it. You get to stand face to face and have a conversation with Darth Vader, which is more intimidating than you might think it is. And it just feels really cool. Unfortunately, the game is only 45 minutes long. It's only $10, but still, that's usually kind of what you'll see out of games for VR right now, is they're usually very short, or they rely on multiplayer or horde modes to extend the length of the game, which can be very, very frustrating. Like, if you really like a game, you really have limited replayability. And I think the problem is that it costs a lot of money to make these games, but there's not a lot of people who own the hardware and who are buying these games yet. So there's not a lot of money in VR software development. Until that changes, we're just going to have to wait that out. There are some amazing experiences in VR. Onward is a really cool shooter. If you like Modern Warfare and want to check it out in VR, Onward is the game for you. It's a great multiplayer experience, and it'll give you a ton of hours of enjoyment. But a lot of the games, like Spider-Man Homecoming, it's amazing to be the web slinger, to swing your way through a city using VR, where you're literally like shooting your webs and swinging and pulling and having a battle in VR is outstanding. But it's really a 10-minute to an hour experience, and then you've pretty much seen all the game has to offer you. And that's just kind of the way VR is now. Is companies get like kind of an idea for VR, and they make just enough of a game to show you that idea, but it's not really fleshed out in the way that a full AAA game for a console or for PC would be. It feels much more like a demo, and then it's over. I played a game called Blades and Sorcery, I believe it is, where you actually, you've got a pretty cool combat system. You can pick up weapons like swords and axes, and you can fight dudes, but really what it comes down to is it's just a horde mode, and you're just kind of fighting the same thing over and over and over again. And while it's really cool to be able to parry and attack with a sword in VR, because there's no story, because there's no progression, it just feels like, all right, like I've done this. Let's move on. What else is there? There are some real gems out there. I really like Trover Saves the Universe. It's like a 3D platformer, with a very Rick and Morty style of humor to it. And it was funny, and it was fun to play. It wasn't the longest game in the world, but it was well worth what I paid for it. And that's really the problem with VR right now. Until that software gets there, it's hard for people to really, recommend VR, but it's really hard for, companies to make great software when there's not a whole lot of buyers for VR. And I think that's really the issue. Overall, with the Oculus Rift S, I gotta say, I'm super impressed by this headset. I really, really like it. The tracking isn't 100%. I do wish that there was an IPD adjustment so it was more usable for more people. I do wish the pads on the headband were removable so you could clean them so they don't get funky. You do tend to sweat quite a bit when you're in VR. But other than that, I think this is a major upgrade over the original Rift headset. I think it's an upgrade over my Vive headset. And I'm pretty impressed with it. I'm definitely planning on holding on to this thing and using it quite a bit. So that's going to do it, guys. $400 is a lot less money than these things were when they first came out 2 years ago. And hopefully at this price point, with this higher resolution screen, it'll entice more people to jump into VR on PC. Let me know what you guys think about the Oculus Rift S in the comments. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.